So right in time as we're mounting the seats, we got Takata harnesses. This all came from HMS Motorsport, including this head and neck restraint that I'll be using. Is super lightweight. This is replacing my Hans. And HMS Motorsport is keeping me safe the last several seasons now. All the safety stuff like harnesses and head and neck restraints are coming from there. Carlos is setting up the passenger side. So the passenger side Takata harness is different because the passenger does not typically use a Hans device. So this is a wide strap for the shoulders. For the driver's side, I do use a head and neck restraint. I'm going to be using this Scroth one right there. So that means the shoulder harnesses are a little bit narrower, and that's so that they fit perfectly into the head and neck restraint. Ooh, very excited. I'm going to put these in the car right now. So after getting the seats and the Takata harnesses in, I kind of ran out of time to pick up the GoPro as we were installing this super bitchin' Monster Service dash. So this thing's carbon fiber. It's super lightweight. I mean, it's like thin and lightweight and amazing. We have to do a little bit of trimming to get it installed, but what's cool about this dash, it already comes narrowed. So usually there's a vent for an S15 right here and on the other side, and they actually narrow the dash in order for cars with cages to be able to install these dashboards easier. So we literally just have to trim it around the dash bar, and it looks really clean. It's a really simple and clean install on a race car that's caged. I had to do quite a bit of trimming here because of the steering column that I chose to run, and it's really far back. So this typically would be like hiding underneath the dash, but since we moved everything so far back, it ends up protruding out of the dash where, you know, like an OEM gauge cluster would go. We don't mount the gauge cluster there. We mount the dash right on the column anyway. So it came out bitchin'. I'm really stoked on it. I feel kind of bad that we ran a hole saw through one of the vent areas here, but you know what? I think gauges belong on an S15 dash in those vents anyway, and I like having a dedicated gas gauge right there that's always live, always on. So thanks, huge thank you to Monster Service for this really sick ass dashboard. doesn't vibrate. The brakes work really decent.
Good.
So
Okay.
just took this thing out for a little spin, and it's working really good. I'm actually surprised how good it is right out of a box, being a brand new car. And this is the very first time I've ever driven it. So very excited about that. I have to rejet the power steering pump. It's a turn 1 pump that we're using right over here. Here's the jet. So this is where the high pressure line comes out. And I was feeling a little bit of wheel shudder, and it might be that there's a little bit of air in the system, but either way, I just, based off how I felt, I want to enlarge that orifice a little bit. What's cool about turn 1 steering is that they take my feedback and they build phenomenal pumps, and we can fine tune them to work very well. Like, we're using a GM pump that's supposed to work well with 240SX rack. That usually goes pretty well, but when you shove the rack way far forward and you put a lot of leverage on it, like with the short steering arm that Weissfab has built into the knuckle, you start getting very nitty and picky about how the pump needs to work in order for the car to feel right. So if you want a power steering pump for your LS and you want it to work good out of the box, you hit up turn 1 steering and tell them you want the same orifice size that Odie runs, the same jetting, and you'll get exactly that, and it'll be dialed right out of the box to work well, especially if you have Weissfab on it. A lot of other power steering pumps they don't jive with Weissfab in an LS because it's so demanding on the power steering system. So yeah, gonna rejet it like I did on my S14. I'm gonna let the turn 1 guys know exactly what I did so they can offer it to you as well. Everything worked as it should. There's a few minor tweaks that we have to do on it, but overall it's there. So we're just kind of putting some weight on the car, my head and neck restraint, a moto helmet, because my other helmet's in the office. I don't want to go grab it, but all the gears inside the car, for the most part, Carlos is fiddling with the fuel sender. It was stuck. We got it unstuck because I'm using an actual fuel gauge, which is right there. But what's exciting is that this thing is going down on corner scales, and we just got to throw the hood on it, the bumper. None of the body panels are staying on the car. I don't want to do the first test day with all the body panels on it, because we're going to fiddle with, Castro a little bit, camber in the front, and that means it might rub the fenders. So I want to get the geometry just right and maybe try some extreme settings before I commit to trimming the front fenders to fit perfect and not rub too much. So right now we're actually setting ride height and putting slightly shorter springs on it. These were actually the spare shocks off of my S14, and we had slightly longer springs on there for some reason, and we definitely need to shrink them down. So Swift is one of our sponsors. We also use Swift on all of our coilover kits that we sell. Swift gave me this little care package of enough springs to get me through the season, trying different rates. We change springs depending on what track we're on. So some tracks that are bumpy, we go a little bit higher in spring rate in order to keep the car off the bump stop, and so I could charge hard, say through the transition from the bank into the infield in Orlando. But we're going to be doing Long Beach as the first round, so we're going to go fairly soft, and we're putting those springs on right now, and we're going to see if all that hard work and effort of taking weight out of the front of the car and putting it towards the center and towards the back of the car paid off to get an S15 with me in it to be 50-50 weight distribution. We needed to fix the cross weight a little bit. So Carlos is under the car right now, somewhere under there. And Carlos, you're just gonna lower it let's just do another 1/8 inch.
Another 1/8 inch? Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I went. So.
Okay, perfect. So he lowered the rear left, it's been a long night. Rear left, 1/8 of an inch, because we were 0.22% off of ideal cross weight. And let's see, it's back on the scales. We just lowered it right now. And I'm just talking through it while he was lowering so,
Went over, huh?
yeah, a little bit.
So we'll have to.
Well, let's see. So I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, we're 49.88, and that's not too bad actually. The really cool thing is, Carlos, click on the front to rear weight distribution real quick, and I'll show you guys what's up with that. Bam! Rear is 50%, which means the front is damn near 50% too. And that is awesome. This is the most balanced S chassis I've ever had in my life, and it might be the most balanced one I've ever driven in my life. This is a S15 that is 50-50 weight percent balance. That is amazing. For an S chassis, that's really good. And we didn't cheat that, meaning we didn't hang a bunch of weight off of the rear axle like behind the subframe. Everything's pretty centralized. The batteries are like the only thing that really hang behind the rear axle that much. The fuel tank is like above the subframe. I'm sitting really far back. Like, I don't know if you can tell from this angle, but I am very far back, and the steering column is far back. The engine was moved further back. The transmission's moved further back. So all of that is paying off. This car it is amazing to see it on the scales being 50% front to rear. I'm stoked. I can't wait to drive this thing. Before going to the dyno, we were going through all the checks on the car, and one of the big checks is making sure the nitrous works. So the way we do that is we obviously don't want to just try it with the bottle on we want to try it without actually sending nitrous to the motor. We want to pulsate the solenoid that's right there. We want to make sure that turns on and off when we tell the car to turn it on and off. So we program the ECU to turn that thing on and turn it off at a certain time, and we want to make sure that it's actually listening to the ECU. We don't want some weird freak thing on the dyno. So what we do is basically we program the nitrous to kick on at 1500 RPM, like very low RPM or throttle percentage as well, and we don't actually run nitrous through it. We just put like a test light to the nitrous solenoid, and we see if it's turning on and turning off. And that makes us pretty confident that, okay, the ECU is doing the right things. It's listening to our tune, and the nitrous solenoid will have the right signal at the right time. And that's when we feel safe to actually run nitrous through it while the engine's running. So we're gonna go through that check right now and make sure it's good. So Matt tried dynoing on the same Texas Speed motor last night, and we're bouncing ideas back and forth, and we decided to change backlash on the valves, and that actually helped him make more power. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Matt, you were kind of a little bit of a guinea pig last night. I'm gonna implement some of the changes that I was recommending you do while you're on the dyno. Ooh, nice and early in the morning. We're here. We're here at West Tech. Means we're ready to dyno. The car's been working pretty good. Everything's been checking off. So we're gonna dyno today. Just gotta unload this thing, get it on the rollers inside the dyno shop, and hopefully check off this huge milestone in getting the new car prepped and built. So hoping for the best. So on that, I usually tie it down. I think we were doing the basically here. Let me see where I can strap it. Yeah, strap it right on the heim for the tension rod area. We're strapping this thing real good. She makes power. Want to keep her on these rollers. Lots going on over here. Done doing pulls with the setup with the supercharger and nitrous, and yeah, it's going okay. We got a oil pressure issue that I'm going to work on as soon as we're done with the dyno here, but we're going to do a naturally aspirated tune as well. So we just bypass the supercharger, and I do that just in case we have any like contacts on the track that take out the intercooler or take out the supercharger or something like that. Then we have a quick solution to make decent power with a little bit more nitrous and just naturally aspirate it. So we're going to do a few more pulls and get this thing loaded up. Was that with nitrous on? Hey, 665, 686 torque. That's not bad. So we're done with the dyno session. The car is dialed, it's tuned. We fixed some of the little issues that we had on the dyno, figured them all out. This thing's ready for a test day. Unfortunately, Formula Drift announced that round 1 is canceled. That's just, all the craziness that's going around the world. And I'm just lucky that I got this far with where we're at with everything that's happening. So we're going to jam on the car a little more. I'll definitely keep you guys in the loop. We'll still produce cool videos on building a cool Formula D car. And if things go well, we're going to take this out and shake it down at the racetrack and see how this animal is on the track. It's looking good. It sounds good. It did well on the dyno. And I really hope that it's going to do just as good on a racetrack during our first test day. So next episode, some cool content coming your way.